The Russian Federation and Ukraine are currently in a state of war. The Russo-Ukrainian War began in 2014 following the Russian annexation of Crimea from Ukraine. In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine across a broad front. The war now has caused 1.5 million people to flee Ukraine. What is the reason behind these conflicts between two countries? Between 1991 and 2014, Russia ramped up its global standing and emerged as a considerable military power. As Ukraine veered towards the west, Moscow grew increasingly concerned that its strategic interests in Crimea were being threatened. The two countries' shared heritage goes back more than 1,000 years to a time when Kiev, now Ukraine's capital, was at the center of the first Slavic state, Kievan Rus, the birthplace of both Ukraine and Russia. In AD 988, Vladimir I, the pagan prince of Novgorod and Grand Prince of Kiev, accepted the Orthodox Christian faith and was baptized in the Crimean city of Chersonesus. From that moment on, Russian President Putin recently declared, "Russians and Ukrainians are one people, a single whole." Mongol warriors from the east conquered Kievan Rus in the 13th century. In the 16th century, Polish and Lithuanian armies invaded from the west. In the 17th century, war between the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Tsardom of Russia brought lands to the east of the Dnieper River under Russian imperial control. The east became known as Left Bank Ukraine. Lands to the west of the Dnieper, or Right Bank, were ruled by Poland. More than a century later, in 1793, Right Bank, Western Ukraine was annexed by the Russian Empire. Over the years that followed, a policy known as Russification banned the use and study of the Ukrainian language, and people were pressured to convert to the Russian Orthodox faith. Ukraine suffered some of its greatest traumas during the 20th century. After the Communist Revolution of 1917, Ukraine was one of the many countries to fight a brutal civil war before being fully absorbed into the Soviet Union in 1922. In the early 1930s, to force peasants to join collective farms, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin orchestrated a famine that resulted in the starvation and death of millions of Ukrainians. Afterward, Stalin imported large numbers of Russians and other Soviet citizens, many with no ability to speak Ukrainian and with few ties to the region, to help repopulate the East. These legacies of history created lasting fault lines. Because Eastern Ukraine came under Russian rule much earlier than Western Ukraine, people in the East have stronger ties to Russia and have been more likely to support Russian-leaning leaders. Western Ukraine, by contrast, spent centuries under the shifting control of European powers such as Poland and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. One reason Ukrainians in the West have tended to support more Western-leaning politicians. The Eastern population tends to be more Russian-speaking and Orthodox, while parts of the West are more Ukrainian-speaking and Catholic. With the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine became an independent nation. But uniting the country proved a difficult task. The sense of Ukrainian nationalism is not as deep in the East as it is in West. The transition to democracy and capitalism was painful and chaotic, and many Ukrainians, especially in the East, longed for the relative stability of earlier eras. These fissures were laid bare during the 2004 Orange Revolution, in which thousands of Ukrainians marched to support greater integration with Europe. Crimea was occupied and annexed by Russia in 2014, followed shortly after by a separatist uprising in the eastern Ukrainian region of Donbass, that resulted in the declaration of the Russian-backed People's Republics of Luhansk and Donetsk. Today, Russian troops are again massed on Ukraine's borders, fault lines that reflect the region's tumultuous history. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe our channel.